Please. The daily routine, presenting and reading petitions, presenting reports of committees, tabling reports, regulations, and other papers, statements by ministers, government notices of motion. Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Kiji Captain Alexander Denny dedicated his life to instilling the importance of Mi'kmaq teachings, beliefs, culture, and language in his people, stressing the importance of the language and passing it on to future generations. Whereas Ilnu Language Lab of the Unama'ki College of Cape Breton University, in partnership with the Mi'kmaq Kinamatnaway and the Nova Scotia Department of Education, supports Mi'kmaq language research and the development and delivery of Mi'kmaq language courses. And whereas Cape Breton University Unama'ki College recently named its language lab after Alex Denny to honor his leadership and his passion for the Mi'kmaq culture and language. Therefore, be it resolved, members of the House of Assembly join me in congratulating Cape Breton University and the family of the late Kiji Captain on the recent naming of Kiji Captain Alex Denny Language Lab. Mr. Speaker, I would ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Labour and Advanced Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas North American Occupational Safety and Health Week runs from May 6th to May 12th, and whereas this year's theme reinforces that safety is the foundation of any successful business and must be ingrained in all work practices, and whereas safety is everyone's responsibility and we must all work together to keep our workplaces free of injuries and illness. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House encourage all Nova Scotians to recognize May 6th to 12th as North American Occupational Safety and Health Week, and emphasize that it is only through our combined efforts that we can make sure our Nova Scotian workplaces are truly safe. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas hospice palliative workers, both paid and voluntary, in Nova Scotia provide unconditional, compassionate care and bring comfort and dignity to individuals approaching the end of their lives. And whereas during the week of May 6th to 12th, governments, healthcare workers, and volunteers recognize National Hospice Palliative Care Week by raising awareness about hospice palliative care. And whereas this year's theme, Let's Work Together, reflects the difference that can be made in the lives of those living with a life-limiting illness when all members of the care team work together, therefore be it resolved that the members of the House of Assembly recognize this week, May 6th to 12th, as Hospice Palliative Care Week and acknowledge the dedication of healthcare professionals, staff, and volunteers in the field. And Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Irving Shipbuilding, Inc. ranks first in General Dynamics Canada, L3 Communications, CAE, Lockheed Martin, and Blue Drop Performance Learning, Inc. are among the top 18 companies of 50 ranked across Canada, and whereas the province has demonstrated its commitment to this sector through its investments in Irving Shipbuilding Inc., the Aerospace and Defense Fund through Jobs Here, a $1.7 million loan to Blue Drop, in past investments in L3, Communications, Lockheed Martin, and General Dynamics, and whereas the aerospace and defense industry contributes almost $600 million in revenue annually to the province's economy, therefore, be it resolved that the House of Assembly congratulates Irving Shipbuilding Inc., General Dynamics Canada, L3 Communications, CAE, Lockheed Martin, and Blue Drop Performance Learning Inc. on being named to the top of a list that recognizes the best and brightest in Canada's growing defense sector. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Gaming Control Act.
The Honourable Minister for Communities, Culture and Heritage begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Gaming Control Act.
Bill number 81, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Gaming Control Act.
Order the bill be read a second time on a future day. The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Before I introduce my bill, I beg leave to make an introduction.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In our East Gallery, I would like to draw the attention of the members to Mary Lee, who is the Executive Director, or probably the CEO, I would think, of the Nova Scotia Association of Health Organizations. And I'd ask members to give her a warm welcome. I'm not sure if she's accompanied by the chair of their board or no, but we welcome all of our guests, and I ask people to extend a warm welcome.
We welcome all our guests to the gallery and hope that they enjoy this afternoon's proceedings. I will now recognize the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 3 of the Acts of 1960, an act to incorporate Nova Scotia Association of Health Organizations.
Table. The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 3 of the Acts of 1960, an act to incorporate Nova Scotia Association of Health Organizations.
Bill number 82, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 111 of the Acts of 1960, an act to incorporate Nova Scotia Association of Health Organizations.
Order the bill be read a second time on a future day. The Honourable Member for Kings North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce an act to amend entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 107 of the Acts of 1935, an act to incorporate the Annapolis Valley Apple Blossom Festival.
The Honourable Member for Kings North begs leave to introduce the bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 107 of the Acts of 1935, an act to incorporate the Annapolis Valley Apple Blossom Festival.
Bill number 83, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 107 of the Acts of 1935, an act to incorporate the Annapolis Valley Apple Blossom Festival.
Order the bill be read a second time on a future day. Notices of motion. The honourable member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to do this resolution in French first. Monsieur le Président, par la présente, j'avise que je proposerai une date ultérieure l'adoption de la résolution suivante. Attendu que la communauté acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse a subi une grande perte à la suite du décès de M. Gaston Chagnon, un ardent défenseur des causes acadiennes de la Nouvelle-Écosse, et attendu que Gaston Chagnon a soutenu le courrier de la Nouvelle-Écosse de façon tangible au cours des années, et attendu que M. Chagnon a appuyé tous les efforts de développement de la langue francophone et la culture acadienne en Nouvelle-Écosse, par conséquent qu'il soit résolu que tous les membres de cette Assemblée reconnaissent la contribution remarquable de M. Gaston Chagnon et offrent leurs sincères condoléances aux membres de sa famille. Et, Monsieur le Président, je propose l'adoption de cette résolution sans préavis et sans débat. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Nova Scotia Acadian community has lost a great supporter, Gaston Chagnon, on February 13, 2012, and whereas Gaston Chagnon was closely associated with Le Courrier de la Nouvelle-Écosse, and whereas M. Chagnon supported all efforts deployed for the development of Acadian education, culture, and the French language in Nova Scotia, therefore be resolved that all members of this House of Assembly recognize the contribution M. Gaston Chagnon has made to enhance the Acadian culture and offer our deepest sympathy to his family. And Mr. Speaker, I would request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on Saturday, May 5th, family and friends gathered at the Bedeck Community Centre to celebrate 50 years in business of Gillis Construction Limited and Gillis Truckways, and whereas for over 50 years, many roads in Victoria County were constructed with materials that were supplied by company owner Duncan Gillis, and whereas Duncan's contribution to his community has extended beyond his business to providing assistance and support to worthy causes within Bedeck and the surrounding community.
Order, please. Seems to be a lot of rumbling in here this evening, a lot of chatter. I'd much rather you people took the chatter outside of the chamber so I can listen to the honourable member's resolution. Again, the honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll do the last whereas. Whereas Duncan's contribution to his community has extended beyond his business to providing assistance and support to worthy causes within Bedeck and the surrounding community. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House of Assembly extend special congratulations to Duncan Gillis on 50 years in business and thank him for his tremendous contributions to his community. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member, the Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Pictou-Antigonish Regional Library has completed its 8th successful Writer-in-Residence program since its inception in 2005 with Pictou County writer Monica Graham. And whereas Monica Graham, a freelance journalist, photographer, and author, acted as mentor and instructor to writers of all types, from aspiring to experienced, by presenting sessions, workshops on writing skills, and reviewing manuscripts. And whereas Monica Graham has had a successful term as the writer in the Writer-in-Residence program at the Pictou-Antigonish Regional Library and has offered encouragement, guidance, and support to writers in Pictou County and Antigonish County. Therefore, be resolved, the Nova Scotia Legislative Assembly congratulates and thanks Monica Graham for sharing her talent, her expertise, and time as the 2011-12 Writer-in-Residence at the Pictou-Antigonish Regional Library. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that welcome. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the toll that child and youth mental disorders take on families and society is well known, placing an importance on promoting mental health and early identification, diagnosis, and effective treatment. And whereas it is imperative that we, as a committed and caring society, do what we know must be done to help our young people. And whereas there are innovative activities happening in our own province, identifying, diagnosing, and treating mental health disorders, thanks to the work by Dr. Stan Kutcher, Dr. Ann Duffy, Dr. John LeBlanc, Patrick McGrath, and Michael Unger. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House of Assembly recognize today, May 7th, as National Child and Youth Mental Health Day. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the 9th annual Gerard Morrison Memorial Montreal vs. Toronto Fans Classic took place at the Sydney Mines and District Community Centre in March, named after Gerard Morrison, one of the hardcore fans who started this annual event but died in 2009, a day before the game. And whereas Charlie Bone, rink manager, provided the ice time to prove once and for all who had the most talented Northside fans, the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Montreal Canadiens. And whereas during the past 9 years, this has become the best attended event at the Community Centre, with all proceeds donated to the Alec Johnson Memorial Scholarship Fund. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House of Assembly congratulate the Northside hockey fans for this annual Community Spirit event. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas May 7th to the 13th, 2012 is Mental Health Week, and whereas organized by the Canadian Mental Health Association, Mental Health Week encourages Nova Scotians and Canadians from all walks of life to learn, converse, reflect, and engage with each other on issues of mental health. And whereas this year's theme, Mental Health for All, reminds all of us that every Nova Scotian and Canadian has the right to enjoy good mental health. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the Legislature recognize May 7th to the 13th as Mental Health Week and acknowledge the efforts of volunteers, professionals, and all mental health organizations who are dedicated to helping our communities and province achieve better mental health for all. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Argyll.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas today marks the beginning of the 61st Annual National Mental Health Week across Canada, and whereas the recent report and recommendations of the Nova Scotia Mental Health and Addiction Strategy Advisory Committee showed 26% of students in Nova Scotia are being screened for increased risk of depression, and that between 10 and 20% of those students who wanted help did not receive it. And whereas statistics from the Mental Health Foundation of Nova Scotia show that 1 in every 5 Nova Scotians is affected by mental illness. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House of Assembly compliment the ongoing work of the Nova Scotia Mental Health Foundation and the Nova Scotia Mental Health Association, and urge the Minister of Health and Wellness to complete the Nova Scotia Mental Health and Addiction Strategy. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say no, nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on May 2nd, 2012, the Halifax Mainland North Volunteer Recognition Committee held their annual Community Champions Awards dinner to recognize outstanding volunteers who consistently dedicate their time and talents to improving the lives of others. And whereas Pam Miller became a Red Cross volunteer in 1999, and during this time has taken on many roles, including that of trainer for disaster management for instructors throughout Atlantic Canada. And whereas Pam Miller is the past president of the Nova Scotia Regional Council of the Canadian Red Cross and has been the Red Cross Emergency Operations Manager for several large responses in our province. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House congratulate Pam Miller for receiving a 2012 Community Champion Award for her remarkable contributions to her community and province and wish her continued success in the future. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Bedford Birch, the honourable member for Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day, I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Andrew Seeley, son of Dave and Margie Seeley of Windsor, graduated from the RCMP Training Academy in Regina on April 30th after beginning his initial training in November. And whereas Andrew was following in the footsteps of his father, Dave, who was a Mountie for a number of years, working in small detachments as well as with special security operations, which saw his expertise called upon for 7 rural tours across Canada involving Queen Elizabeth II and different prime ministerial visits. And whereas following a congratulatory reception hosted by his parents at the Windsor Curling Club Friday, Andrew's first posting will be in the sport fishing capital of Manitoba, a small town 1,100 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg known as Lynn Lake. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House of Assembly extend good wishes to Andrew Seeley on his first RCMP posting and wish him every success with his chosen career. And Mr. Speaker, I would seek waiver and pass this without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. Now the honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Donner Prize was established in 1998 to honour excellence and innovation in Canadian public policy thinking, writing, and research in Canada. And whereas this year's $50,000 prize was awarded to Democratizing the Constitution by Peter O'Coin, Mark D. Jarvis, and Laurie Turnbull, who argue in their book that the governing principle that the executive must be accountable to the people's elected representatives is eroding, and that our Constitution and its unwritten rules no longer provide effective constraints on a Prime Minister's power. And whereas the late Dr. O'Coin was Professor Emeritus of Political Science and Public Administration at Dalhousie University, where Dr. Turnbull is an Associate Professor of Political Science at Dalhousie University as well, therefore, it be resolved that the members of this House of Assembly congratulate Dalhousie's Laurie Turnbull and the late Peter O'Coin and the University of Victoria's Mark Jarvis on their award and on their examination of the unchecked power of the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the municipality of the County of Victoria celebrated its 39th annual Volunteer Recognition Night recently during Volunteer Week in Canada, and whereas the South Haven Community Hall, the Iona Beautification Committee, the Neils Harbour New Haven Development Association, Ski Cape Smoky, and the Bedeck Lions Club organizations were recognized for their contribution and outstanding dedication to their community. And whereas volunteer organizations in all rural communities, such as Victoria County, are the backbone of sport, recreation, cultural, spiritual, and social sectors. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House of Assembly congratulate all board members and volunteers of the South Haven Community Hall, the Iona Beautification Committee, the Neils Harbour New Haven Development Association, Ski Cape Smoky, and the Bedeck Lions Club, and thank them for their contribution to their communities. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Colchester North.
Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Ben Holmes is a grade 12 student at North Colchester High School in Tatamagouche, Colchester North, where he has earned honours with distinction each year. And whereas Ben is a dedicated team player participating in soccer, basketball, softball, where he strives to improve his skills, doing the best for his team. And whereas Ben's determination is very evident, especially when competing at Reach for the Top, using his interest in trivia and his competitive nature to his advantage to succeed in these competitions. Therefore, be it resolved, all members of the House of Assembly
Assembly congratulate Ben Holmes for being named Student of the Month at North Colchester High School for March 2012. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Florence Elementary School students, as part of Kids for Peace program, decided to make Florence a more beautiful place to live by planting daffodil and tulip bulbs on the ground of the Canada Post Office. And whereas the Kids for Peace program for Love and Action cultivates a child's ability to foster peace through hands-on arts, service, and environmental projects. And whereas the grade primary class, along with their teacher, Jan Murray, are now anxiously awaiting for the arrival of spring to see their flowers pop through the soil. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House of Assembly congratulate Miss Murray and her students for taking such a proactive role in the beautification of their community. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Yarmouth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas this week marks North American Occupational Health and Safety Week, and whereas workplace safety is paramount in protecting workers across the province, and we all have a responsibility to ensure that workplaces are safe, and whereas Nova Scotia can only prosper if the measures are taken to guarantee and promote workplace safety and injury prevention, therefore be resolved that all members of this House of Assembly, together with workers across the province, to promote work together with workers across the province to promote workplace safety and ensure safety and wellness for all Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Hants West.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Windsor's Jake Loy was recently named in Nova Scotia's High Performance Junior Development Golf Program, and whereas the Executive Director of Golf Nova Scotia, Dave Campbell, said 15-year-old Loy is committed to the game and has tremendous potential, and whereas the 2012 High Performance Program will involve coaching, including a clinic at Osprey Ridge Golf Club in Bridgewater, site of the 2012 Canadian Junior Men's Golf Championship, with Robert Radcliffe, one of the coaches from Canada's national junior team. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House of Assembly extend sincere wishes to Jake Loy on being named to the 2012 Nova Scotia High Performance Junior Golf Development Program and wish him success on Nova Scotia's golf courses this summer. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and pass this without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Richmond.
Monsieur le Président, une date ultérieure, je demanderai l'adoption de la résolution suivante. Attendu que l'équipe féminine de volleyball Richmond Rise Under 16 a participé au tournoi provincial Tier 2 à Halifax durant la fin de semaine des 27 et 28 avril, et attendu qu'avec seulement 7 joueuses et aucune joueuse suppléante sur le banc, les filles ont réussi à vaincre Sackville pour gagner la médaille de bronze du tournoi qui comptait 18 équipes. Et attendu que sous la direction de leur entraîneur Rhonda Giroir, dont c'était la première année, l'équipe était formée de Casey Boudreau, Samantha Martel, Kaylee Landry, Megan Pierce, Grace Starkey, Simone Savory, Alex Burke, Kendra Sanson et Brittany Gurney, à qui on a décerné l'étoile du tournoi pour sa performance. Par conséquent, il est résolu que les membres de l'Assemblée législative de la Nouvelle-Écosse se joignent à moi pour féliciter l'entraîneur Rhonda Giroir et l'équipe féminine de volleyball Richmond Rise Under 16 pour avoir remporté la médaille de bronze au tournoi provincial Tier 2 et pour leur souhaiter de succès dans leur prochaine compétition. Monsieur le Président, je demande l'adoption de cette résolution sans préavis et sans débat. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Richmond Rise Under 16 volleyball girls team competed at the Tier 2 provincial tournament in Halifax on the weekend of April 27-28, and whereas with only 7 players and no extra players on the bench, the girls battled back to beat Sackville and win the bronze medal game in the 18-team tournament. And whereas under the direction of first-year coach Rhonda Giroir, the team consisted of Casey Boudreau, Samantha Martel, Kaylee Landry, Megan Pierce, Grace Starkey, Sivan Savory, Alex Burke, Kendra Sampson, and Brittany Gurney, who was awarded Tournament All-Star for her efforts. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly join me in congratulating Coach Rhonda Giroir and the Richmond Rise Under-16 girls volleyball team for winning the bronze medal at the Tier 2 Provincials and wish them continued success. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Colchester North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas market needs are presenting an increasing demand for skilled workers in key sectors of our economy, and whereas the Nova Scotia Community College Truro campus offers a 5-year automotive service technician course, and whereas the students have a block of 6 weeks of schooling each year, a total of 8,000 hours of work in the field during the course of the program, and must write the test for Red Seal certification. Therefore, be it resolved, all members of the House of Assembly congratulate Mike Boyce of Colchester North for receiving his Red Seal certification in automotive service technician. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas May 6 to the 12th, 2012 has been dedicated as National Nursing Week in Canada, and whereas this year's theme, Nursing, the Health of Our Nation, underscores the vital and essential role all nurses play in our healthcare system in order to improve the lives and well-being of Nova Scotians and Canadians, and whereas Nova Scotia is most fortunate to have such a high caliber of women and men who each and every day provide exceptional care and support to patients in our acute, long-term care, home care, and public health care sectors. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House of Assembly salute our nursing workforce and extend to all nurses throughout Nova Scotia our appreciation for the exceptional care they provide each and every day. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Richmond.
Monsieur le Président, une date ultérieure, je demanderai l'adoption de la résolution suivante. Attendu que les pieds au vol est une troupe de danse formée d'élèves de la 7e à la 12e année de l'école Beauport sous la direction de l'enseignante Renée Sanson. Et attendu qu'après avoir pratiqué de 3 à 6 jours par semaine, les pieds au vol ont montré Cendrillon en français et ont présenté le spectacle à plusieurs endroits et l'ont soumis à Walt Disney dans le cadre du programme Dance the Magic. Et attendu que les 14 et 15 avril dernier, les pieds au vol, accompagnés d'anciens membres de la troupe aujourd'hui à l'université, ont participé à la parade Disney dans la rue principale ainsi qu'au spectacle Disney Dance the Magic en Californie, où ils ont présenté 2 danses à claquettes de style acadien et où ils ont participé à plusieurs répétitions de danse ainsi qu'à un camp de danse présenté par les chorégraphes de Disney World. Par conséquent, il est résolu que les membres de l'Assemblée législative de la Nouvelle-Écosse se joignent à moi pour féliciter l'enseignante Renée Sanson et les membres de la troupe Chantal Berthier, René N. Sanson, Michel Sanson, René George, Jannick Boudreau, Caitlin Boudreau, Lauren Boudreau, Janelle Boudreau, Carrie Boudreau, Grace Starkey, Victoria David, Alicia David, Carly Keogh, Tony Pierce, Jaden David, André Sanson, Micheline Savory, Michaela Sullivan, Jessica Sanson, Christine Boucher, Samantha Martel et Darby Keating pour leur remarquable performance à Disney World en Californie et pour leur souhaiter du succès dans les années à venir. Monsieur le Président, je demande l'adoption de cette résolution sans préavis et sans débat. Oui. Merci. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Les Pieds au Vol is a dance troupe of students from grades 7 to 12 at École Beauport under the direction of teacher Renee Sampson. And whereas after practicing 3 to 6 days a week, Les Pieds au Vol put on a performance of Cinderella in French, which was performed at several locations and submitted to Walt Disney under the Dance the Magic program. And whereas on April 14th and 15th, Les Pieds au Vol, joined by former members who are now in university, performed in the Main Street Disney Parade and performed in the Disney Dance the Magic Showcase in California, where they performed 2 routines of their Acadian-style step dancing, while also taking part in several dance practices and a dance camp presented by the choreographers of Disney World. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly join me in congratulating instructor Renee Sampson and Les Pieds au Vol dancers Chantal Berthier, Renee and Sampson, Michelle Sampson, Renee George, Jannick Boudreau, Caitlin Boudreau, Lauren Boudreau, Janelle Boudreau, Carrie Boudreau, Grace Starkey, Victoria David, Alicia David, Carly Keogh, Tony Pierce, Jaden David, Andre Sanson, Micheline Savory, Michaela Sullivan, Jessica Sanson, Christine Boucher, Samantha Martel, and Darby Keating for their remarkable accomplishment of dancing at Disney World in California, and wish them continued success. And Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day, I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Canadian Welding Association held their student weld-off competition on April 27th, 2012 at the College of the North Atlantic in Port au Basque in Newfoundland. And whereas this event is a welding competition for welding students enrolled in 1- or 2-year entry level in the Atlantic provinces. And whereas Nathan Boudreau of Clare, a first-year student at the NSCC Burge campus in Yarmouth, was the first place winner in this competition. Therefore, it be resolved that all members of this House of Assembly congratulate Nathan Boudreau and wish him continued success in the future. Mr. Speaker, I would request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Bedford Birch Cove.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I should move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Nova Scotia-born 19th century war hero William Nelson Hall was the first black man, the first Nova Scotian, and the first member of the Navy to receive the Victoria Cross for extraordinary valor and devotion to duty while facing a hostile force, the highest honour in the Canadian honours system. And whereas Mr. Hall joined the Royal Navy and had already been awarded 3 combat medals when he was sent to Lucknow, India in 1857, where the Indian Mutiny was underway, and there he volunteered to serve on one of 2 crews ordered to break through the walls of a building where the rebel army was positioned, which he did even as every member of the crews was killed, save one other. And whereas many Nova Scotians believe it is high time William Hall was recognized with a memorial at either the Valiance Memorial or the National War Memorial, therefore be it resolved the members of this House of Assembly urge the Government of Canada to act now to honour William Nelson Hall, VC, in our nation's capital. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Bedford Institute of Oceanography is Canada's premier centre for oceanographic research, providing advice and support on ocean issues, including safe navigation, offshore energy development, sustainable fishing, climate change, and protecting marine biodiversity and aquatic species at risk. And whereas the Bedford Institute of Oceanography has more than 600 employees covering 6 federal government departments and partners with local universities, industry, and community organizations. And whereas on October 24th, 1962, W.E. Van Steenberg gave an address marking the official opening of Bedford Institute of Oceanography, saying, quote, "I envision a period of an expanding endeavor leading to mutually integrated and beneficial research program which will enhance the scientific stature of each and contribute to the solution for many complex and difficult problems to face the oceanography of the future. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly recognize the important contributions of the Bedford Institute of Oceanography, its staff, students, volunteers, and supporters made over the past 50 years to the knowledge, protection, and enhancement of the world's ocean environments. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waivers and agreed. All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Yarmouth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas between 1976 and 1987, Elroy D'Entremont was a member of at least 3 provincial championship hockey teams, was on a maritime championship team, and won a silver medal as he represented Nova Scotia at the Canada Games in Manitoba in 1979. And whereas Elroy D'Entremont was named Best Defenseman in 5 tournaments and won MVP honors at the local, regional, and provincial levels, and whereas on May 5th, 2012, Elroy D'Entremont was inducted into the Yarmouth Town and County Sports Heritage Association's Hall of Fame. Therefore, it be resolved that the members of this House of Assembly congratulate Elroy D'Entremont on being inducted into the Yarmouth Town and County Sports Heritage Association's Hall of Fame and recognize his athletic achievements and contributions to sports in Yarmouth. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
Request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Under-15 Tier 1 Nova Scotia Volleyball Championship was held at the Canada Games Complex in Halifax, April 26th to 28th, featuring 10 teams from across the province. And whereas the number 1 seed, Cape Breton Attackers, defeated the Armview Storm of Halifax in the championship, 25-21, 22-25, and finally 15-12 to capture the provincial title. And whereas Shauna Burke of Lewisburg was named championship MVP, while Haley Hunt of Howie Centre and Glace Bay's own Emily McDonald were named as tournament all-stars. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of this House of Assembly join me in congratulating the players and coaches of the Nova Scotia champion, Cape Breton Attackers, and we wish them success in the future. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Clayton Park community and staff at Keshen Goodman Library were pleased to welcome Heather McKenzie as the new manager in December 2011. And whereas Heather has been a champion for literacy and has promoted youth education throughout her 30-year career with Halifax Public Libraries. And whereas Heather has been part of the innovative IWK Read to Me program and is currently president of the Atlantic Book Awards Society. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this House of Assembly congratulate Heather McKenzie on her appointment as manager of the Keshen Goodman Library and wish her continued success in the future. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Government House Leader. The honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island on an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the East Gallery today are 2 not familiar faces in this House, but certainly familiar in the others outside. Alison Clark is one of the youngest and first members to join my campaign when I was being nominated in 2005, and she's at the University of Guelph. And Jordan Raycroft. Jordan Raycroft is a singer-songwriter who's traveling across the country, and he's been singing at a number of coffee houses, and in fact I had the great pleasure of being at a private concert by him this weekend, and I'm delighted to welcome them to this House, and I thank them for their great service to the community. So I ask them to rise and receive the warm applause of this House.
The Honourable Government House Leader on Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we should now leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the whole House on bills.
The motion is carried.
Order, please. The Committee of the Whole House on Bills will come to order. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, would you please call Bill number 5, the Municipal Government Act?
I call Bill number 5, the Municipal Government Act. Shall Clause 1 carry? Oh, back up. I did it again. Need the clerk to say it. Sorry.
Madam Chair, Bill number 5 has 2 clauses and it was reported back from Law Amendments Committee without amendments.
Thank you very much. Now, shall Clause 1 carry? Carry. Shall the remaining clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. Recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Okay, we'll get it right this time. Madam Chair, could you please call Bill number 13, the Education Act?
I now call Bill number 13, the Education Act.
Madam Chair, also reported back from Law Amendments Committee without amendments. This bill has 2 clauses.
Shall Clause 1 carry? Shall the remaining clause carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, could you please call Bill number 34, the Matrimonial Status Repeal Act?
Call Bill number 34, the Matrimonial Statutes Repeal Act.
Madam Chair, Bill number 34 was reported back from Law Amendments Committee without amendments and has 7 clauses.
Thank you. Shall Clause 1 carry? Shall the remaining clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, could you please call Bill number 37, the Interjurisdictional Support Orders Act?
Call Bill number 37, the Interjurisdictional Support Orders Act.
Madam Chair, Bill number 37 was reported back from Law Amendments Committee without amendments and has 27 clauses.
Thank you. Shall Clause 1 carry? Shall the remaining clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, could you please call Bill 39, the Maintenance and Custody Act?
Call Bill number 39, the Maintenance and Custody Act.
Madam Chair, Bill 39 has 5 clauses and was reported back without amendments from the Committee on Law Amendments.
Thank you. Shall Clause 1 carry? Shall the remaining clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Madam Chair, could you please call Bill 41, Grandparents' Rights Affirmation Act?
Call Bill number 41, the Grandparents' Rights Affirmation Act.
Madam Chair, Bill number 41 has 2 clauses and was reported back without amendments from Law Amendments.
Shall Clause 1 carry? Shall the remaining clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. Recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, could you please call Bill 59, the Fish Harvesters Registration and Certification Board Act?
Call Bill number 59, the Fish Harvesters Registration and Certification Board Act.
Madam Chair, Bill number 59 has 23 clauses and was reported back without amendments from the Committee on Law Amendments.
Thank you. Shall Clause 1 carry? Shall the remaining clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. Recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, could you please call Bill 61, the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act?
I call Bill number 61, the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act.
Madam Chair, the Bill 61 was reported back from the Law Amendments Committee without any amendments and contains 7 clauses.
Shall Clause 1 carry? Shall the remaining clauses carry? Shall the title carry? Shall the bill carry? Carried. Recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Madam Chair, I wish you to now rise and report progress.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We'll now rise and report progress. To the House.
Order. The Chair of the Committee of the Whole hosts on supply reports.
That the Committee of the Whole has met and considered the following bills. Bills 5, 13, 34, 37, 39, 41, 59, and 61 without amendments, and the Chairman has been instructed to recommend these bills to the favorable consideration of the House.
Carried. I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the consent of the House, and that if we could move into third reading of the bills just mentioned that just have returned from Committee of the Whole House.
Agreed. Third reading on bills that are just reported back from the Committee of the Whole House. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill number 5, the Municipal Governments Act?
Bill number 5, the Municipal Governments Act. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 5, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 18 of the Acts of 1998, the Municipal Government Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, could you please call Bill number 13, the Education Act?
Bill number 13, the Education Act. The question, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 13, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. The Honourable Government House Leader.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill number 34, the Matrimonial Statutes Repeal Act?
The Bill number 34, the Matrimonial Status Repeal Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 34, entitled An Act to Repeal Outdated Matrimonial Statutes.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill number 37, the Interjurisdictional Support Orders Act?
Bill number 37, the Interjurisdictional Support Orders Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 37, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 9 of the Acts of 2002, the Interjurisdictional Support Orders Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. I now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill number 39, the Maintenance and Custody Act?
Bill number 39, the Maintenance and Custody Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 39, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 160 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Maintenance and Custody Act, respecting dependent children and their best interests.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill 41, the Grandparents' Right Affirmation Act?
Bill number 41, the Grandparents' Rights Affirmation Act. Is the House ready for the question? The Honourable Member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to stand in my place to speak for a few moments on Bill 41. Mr. Speaker, we've said numerous times that the bill that the government has put forward is meaningless in the fact that all it does is insert the word grandparents, and they were already included in the word others that was there. You know, Mr. Speaker, I think grandparents have been done an injustice by bringing the bill forward in the way the government has proceeded. Grandparents are in most cases not looking for custody of their grandchild, but want to be able to at least see their grandchildren. But in some cases, that's not happening through no fault of the child or no fault of the grandparent, Mr. Speaker. We did table a bill that would give the grandparents that right through the proper systems, but I guess it's important that we look, when I think about what took place here last week when we had grandparents and great-grandparents protesting in front of the legislature, how serious they are. And I know, speaking personally, I have a granddaughter that'll be 2 in August, and I can't imagine what it would be like if my right to see my granddaughter was taken away from me. So I think it's important that we look as we go forward to making it easier, unless there is any reasonable doubt, that these grandparents that are so passionate about what they're doing would have the right to see their grandchild. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll take my seat.
Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 41, entitled an Act to amend Chapter 160 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Maintenance and Custody Act, to affirm grandparents' rights.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill 59, Fish Harvesters Registration and Certification Board Act?
Bill number 59, Fish Harvesters Registration and Certification Board Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 59, entitled an Act to establish the Fish Harvesters Registration and Certification Board.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill 61, Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act?
Bill number 61, Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 61, entitled an Act to amend Chapter 25 of the Acts of 1996, the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act.
Order that the bill do pass. Order that the title be as read by the clerk. Order that the bill be engrossed. I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with unanimous consent of the House, I wonder if we could do second readings of private and local bills.
Agreed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, would you please call Bill 83, an Act to amend Chapter 107 of the Acts of 1935, an Act to incorporate the Annapolis Valley Apple Blossom Festival.
Bill number 83. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 83, entitled an Act to amend Chapter 107 of the Acts of 1935, an Act to incorporate the Annapolis Valley Apple Blossom Festival.
Order that the bill be referred to the Committee on Private and Local Bills. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill number 79, the Education Act?
Bill number 79, the Education Act. I will now recognize the Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that Bill 79 be read a second time. I'm pleased to rise in my place to speak to this bill, an amendment to the Education Act. This bill is designed to align the Education Act with changes that were agreed to in the Teachers' Provincial Agreement. Mr. Speaker, this amendment will ensure there is consistency and clarity between the Act and the TPA. When provisions of the TPA are adjusted as a result of negotiations, it is sometimes necessary to amend the Education Act as well, to mirror the changes to ensure there is consistency. Mr. Speaker, that is the case with Bill 79. Under the proposed changes, school boards in the province will have the option of extending a probationary contract for a third year from 2 if a teacher did not accrue a minimum of 145 days of service in any probationary year. Although the Ministerial Education Act regulations define the school year as consisting of 195 days, the 145-day figure represents 75% of the school year, which should provide a board with sufficient time to evaluate a teacher's performance during a probationary year, if required. Extending a probationary contract for a third year is simply providing school boards an option if it is required. The other amendment deals with replacing assistant superintendent with the word director to update the terminology now being used and will align the Education Act with the definition of senior staff contained in the Ministerial Education Act regulations. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is about providing consistency and clarity. These changes were agreed to during the last round of bargaining and signed by parties on November the 10th of the last year. The amendments are the result of two partners working together through the collective bargaining process and finding common ground to ensure there is no grey area with these issues. Bill 79 is about the province living up to its commitment made to the Nova Scotia Teachers Union to ensure there is consistency between the Education Act and the Teachers Provincial Agreement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the official opposition, we're pleased to see this bill coming forward that better reflects the agreements that have been put in place with the Nova Scotia Teachers Union. Speaker, I would be remiss if I did not say that we continue to be very troubled by the strain in the relationship that has developed between this minister, this government, with the hard-working teachers throughout this province. Just a week ago, Speaker, or so, we did have representatives from Nova Scotia Teachers Union here to express their concern with this government's continued cuts to education, which now total over $65 million, which is clearly having a negative impact on the classroom. In fact, today I spoke with a parent in my riding who was quite concerned over the fact that this school year her daughter, who has autism, was not granted a teacher assistant, and the difficulties that she has encountered, and her fear now that with her daughter graduating from grade 8 and moving on to high school, whether or not she will have a teacher's aide to help her with that very challenging transition. So these cuts are having an impact, and I would be remiss if I didn't remind the minister of her comments during the day when the Teachers Union was here, and her response to one of the questions was, in essence, the Nova Scotia Teachers Union is looking out for their members while her government is looking out for students. Madam Speaker, a more unfortunate statement I cannot think of when it comes to teachers in our province, to suggest that their union is simply looking at its membership and has absolutely no interest in the best, no interest in our students, clearly is an extremely unfortunate statement. I received correspondence from a number of teachers that were simply outraged at the comments that were made, certainly knowing the minister's own history with the union movement as a teacher and active with the union, to hear those types of comments. So I would suggest to you, Mr. Speaker, that more work needs to be done. More importantly, more respect needs to be shown to the men and women to who each day we entrust our children to be cared for and to be educated in the best possible way. It's certainly no way for a Minister of Education to treat them, and certainly no way for this government to treat them. And I certainly hope that we are going to see a change in that relationship in the very near future, which I believe is essential for the best interests of our public education system here in this province. Merci.
If I recognize the Honourable Minister, it'll be to close debate. The question is for second reading on Bill number 79, the Education Act. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 79, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act.
Order that the bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. I will now recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, could you please call Bill number 78, the Justice Administration Act 2012?
Bill number 78, the Justice Administration Act. If I recognize the Honourable Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we now do second reading of Bill number 78, the Justice Administration Act 2012.
The Honourable Member for Richmond.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and on behalf of the Minister of Justice, I'd be more than happy to explain this bill in a bit more detail. Justice Administration Act is a yearly, sometimes bi-yearly, occurrence here in the province of Nova Scotia, where governments bring in a number of administrative type changes. And while I've certainly been very vocal in my concerns over the years that government has tried to include some fairly controversial elements in this Justice Administration Act, this one may not fall under that title, but certainly has a few elements to it which I believe are of concern to us and should be of concern to Nova Scotians. In essence, this bill is looking to make changes to some of the boards that we administer here in the province of Nova Scotia. Some of the ones that will be affected is Arts Nova Scotia, the Creative Nova Scotia Leadership Council, the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation Board, and the Film Classification Board. There is as well a change to the House of Assembly Management Commission, which, Mr. Speaker, you'll be aware that I tabled legislation in essence to do the exact same thing that's included in this bill. When the House Management Commission was created, many ways it copied the Newfoundland legislation, and one of the peculiar items that was in there, it said that if you were a member of the House of Assembly Management Commission, you couldn't sit as a member of the Public Accounts Committee. Where the link is between the two, I'm not quite sure, but it created a bit of a bizarre situation in the fact that right now we had two members of the Management Commission that also wanted to be participants on the Public Accounts Committee, yet the Act itself did not allow that to happen. So this was something that I think was just included in the legislation without thought of the implications. This creates certainly a major problem, especially when you have smaller caucuses, which often happens in opposition. The idea of barring members from being able to sit on two committees is not something I believe that applies to any other committees of the House. So this is something that was added in, which I don't think anyone would argue is a necessity. So this change will now allow members who sit on the House of Assembly Management Commission to also sit as members of the Public Accounts Committee as well. One of the concerns that we have with Bill number 78, and because it's a Justice Administration bill, the minister that we'd like to hear from regarding our concern is the Minister of Finance, who, if I'm not mistaken, would be the minister responsible for the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation Board. At a time when government is cutting, whether it be education, whether it be health care, whether it be the Rural Impact Mitigation Fund and Department of Transportation Infrastructure Renewal, and a number of other programs, the government is bringing in a bill to put 2 new members on the board of the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation. Now, when you look at the fact the province of Nova Scotia, I believe you could say we're a $9 billion corporation in the revenues that we bring in, along with federal transfers. This would not be a major budgetary item, but in a time of restraint, why the government would be wanting to increase the membership of the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation Board, I believe is a question Nova Scotians should be asking themselves. Because this board pays a fee to its members of $1,000 a month. So for 2 extra members, that's $24,000 a year. Now, Mr. Speaker, if I'm not mistaken, that may pay for the salary of a teacher assistant or it may help pay the salary of a library assistant. Instead, we're going to put 2 more Nova Scotians on the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation Board. Again, because this is coming from the Minister of Justice through a Justice Administration Act, the Minister of Finance is not required to stand in the House and justify that decision. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation has been bringing in record profits to the Treasury of the province of Nova Scotia. So it's not a situation where it's a Crown corporation which is not performing as we would hope. I believe the media reports were that it was to encourage a bit more diversity of backgrounds on the board. That's a laudable goal, but at a time of fiscal restraint that the government is preaching, is this really the right time to be increasing the size of a board that pays probably some of the highest fees of any of the boards that we have, any of the boards, agencies or commissions that we have here in the province of Nova Scotia. So I know I'm very curious to see how the Minister of Finance would justify growing the Liquor Corporation Board at a time of restraint, spending $24,000 of taxpayers' money for members of the Liquor Corporation Board, while the Minister of Education is cutting teachers' assistants and cutting library technicians and other supports in our education system. The Minister of Health is required to ask health authorities to cut back on their funding. This certainly sends a mixed message, to say the least, from this government. So, as I said, while he's not required to do so, I would hope that the Minister of Finance, who's responsible for this board, would take the opportunity on second reading to explain to the House and explain to Nova Scotians how and why he feels this is an appropriate time to be growing the composition of the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation. And Mr. Speaker, with those comments, I certainly look forward to hearing from the Minister of Finance so that we can better understand why this is necessary at this point in time. Merci.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't planning to speak today, but I was listening to the wise words of the member opposite, and I thought I'd take a brief opportunity to address a question. It's a good question, of course. Why would we be proposing to expand the board of the Liquor Corporation? And the answer, and I suppose, Mr. Speaker, is simple. It is, I would point out, fully laid out in the news release that accompanied this bill. It's being done at the request of the board, and the chair of the board is prepared to speak to anyone in the House or outside the House who has a question about this. And it is simply a matter of good governance practices that the chair of the board has found the board to be too small to be properly functional in a modern board governance environment. And in particular, Mr. Speaker, the 7 members of the board is not enough to have a fully functioning committee system. And modern governance practice means you have to have, for example, a fully functioning audit committee, a human resources committee, and so on and so on. It can't just be the same people doing all the committee work. And so, at the request of the chair of the board, we accept that modern governance practices would suggest that the board can function better with 9 members rather than 7. I do want to stress this is coming forward at the request of the board. That is the rationale that they have offered, which the government accepts. And that's the reason for the expansion of the board. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If I am to recognize the question is for second reading of Bill number 78, the Justice Administration. Is the host ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 78, entitled An Act Respecting the Administration of Justice.
Order that the bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that concludes the government's business for today. I wish you to now rise and the House to meet from the hours of 12 noon to 8 p.m.
The motion for adjournment has been made. All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. We will now rise to sit between the hours tomorrow of 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. 12 noon.